we know what to design? How do we know how big it's going to be? How do we know what it's going to look like? How do we know the client's going to like what we're designing? So these are all really big questions, and it's sort of a mystery to most people. We go through this extensive process of asking questions. It takes them maybe an hour to fill out, and they're going to provide us answers and send those back to us. We'll review it. We'll probably have more questions. We'll ask them another set of questions. And this will go back and forth maybe once or twice, 2 or 3 times. And finally, we'll get to a point where our clients will fundamentally know that we know what their wants and needs are, what their dreams are. And because of that, there's a fundamental trust that's established. We go into a design process before we even start drawing a line on the paper, knowing really the whole sort of psychological profile of the client. So we're confident that when we finally unroll a plan, when we have a beautiful drawing that we've sketched out and unroll it, we think the client's going to love it. We had a big surprise as when we did the survey. We had no idea, but we found out that the swimming pool that was just built 2 years before the home burnt down was actually built, half of the pool was built over the setback line. We've told Mr. and Mrs. Janega that we're going to have to go in back to the county, get a retroactive variance to approve the pool that was already built and approved. Because we've been in situations where way down the line, we've said, well, that you've already approved it, and then when they find out there's a mistake, they disapprove it. It sounds crazy, but that could happen. So we found out what that is. The other thing that we're going to do, since we are going to go for apply for a variance, there's some other setbacks, and these are very general. They're in the code that are going to tell us how far the house has to be, the new house, from the edge of the road. And we've discovered that the current house wouldn't have even met the requirements of today's setback requirements. So we're going to see if we can get those amended so we can build closer to the location of where the original house was. So one of the first things that we look at when we're trying to decide how to evaluate a potential site for a new home is to evaluate a survey for the site. So what I've got down here is a topographic survey that was commissioned that shows where things like the existing roadways to where the pre-existing home used to sit. And so this is a footprint that shows where that house used to sit. And over here, where the existing swimming pool is. Between these 2 blue lines down here is where the river is. And the river flows all the way this direction. This is a building pad area. And this area to the river is 39 feet drop in elevation. So what these lines that you're seeing here are representing 1 foot of drop in the grade as the site slowly slopes down, and then it gets steeper down to the river. And then of course, if you look when we look this direction, the site is rising up. You're going to arrive and look down onto the house. And then when you're at the house, you're going to look down onto the river. And we have an app on our phone, and this lines up exactly south. So this tells us how the sun rises and sets throughout the entire year. So it'll pick the day. It's coordinated to the GPS coordinates of that property. So if I draw a line here, just a reference for myself, line that up. Obviously, the opposite direction is north. This direction's east. This direction's west. So that's a really critical thing that we need to know when we're evaluating the site, is which way the sun rises in the morning. It's going to come around to the west and it'll set over in this direction. So you'll have this big radius as the sun rises in the sky and sets. So the hottest part of the day in the afternoon will be where the current pool is, at least in the relation to this older house. And the coolest part of the site, and the site with the least amount of really intense sun, is going to be facing directly east toward the river. In this case, all of our best views are to the north and to the east. So this is a real great opportunity for us. Some of the other things that we can do is examine where all of the trees are. And so when we've got trees that are native oak trees, and this project is filled with native oak trees, although there are some native plants that are right down by the river edge, those are protected trees. A lot of them are protected, some aren't. And so what we're trying to do is work around the trees. The other thing that we're doing is trying to determine which way there could be breezes. And so because we're at the bottom of a canyon, we're going to get what they call downslope breezes. So as the sun sets, it gets cool, the cool air drains down off the edges of the canyon, and it's going to drain right down to this location where the house is, and it's going to drive the cool breeze down the river, down the canyon. So in some instances that could be a negative because it could be really cold really quickly, where you could have a 10 or 15 degree difference between where the river is and at the top of the ridge where the canyon is. So we want to make sure we know where those breezes are coming and actually use those breezes to help evaluate the best way to design the house. So we can open windows, have cross ventilation, rapidly cool the house off, and really make it a more comfortable space and not use energy to do that. We use just the natural energy of the thermal breeze coming down through the project, cooling everything off. So we'll look at that. Since they have a pool, then we're going to keep this pool. It's an existing pool. We want the pool to have as much sun on it most of the day, so it is warmed up by the radiant heat of the sun, stays warm, stays comfortable to swim in the shoulder season, so the early spring and the late fall. We want that pool to be comfortable to swim in. So it's actually located in the site in a really great area. So one of the things that we are going to look at here is also which way the current driveway is to the property, and decide whether or not we're going to reuse that driveway or if we have to put a new driveway in. Now, it's not as necessarily as easy as it is, because the driveway where it meets the road, that's already been approved by the local jurisdiction for easements. So we'll see if we can just use that same point of easement for entering into the site. So we'll look at that. We'll see if the slope of the driveway that's here and the new pad for the house that we're going to design, if those are going to work. We like to design a driveway where it's a maximum slope of 15%. So we'll look at that and design a new plan around that driveway. So this is sort of a beginning of a process. We know where the oaks are. We're going to evaluate the grades. We're going to evaluate which way the sun rises and sets, which way the breezes are both in the fall, spring, winter, and summer, because they change. That's also going to tell us which direction the driving rain comes. So most of the driving rain in Northern California comes from the southwest and can really almost be horizontal in a bad storm. So we want to really know which way we're going to have a lot of glass for waterproofing. We want to know where shadows are going to fall. So obviously if we're going to have an outdoor area to live in the house and it's under a big shadow, it's going to be cold and you're not going to want to be able to sit out there. So we have to evaluate where those shadows fall. We're looking at the approach to the house. What are we going to see as we approach it down the driveway? What are the views that we're going to see? And then finally, we'll walk around the site. Maybe we'll go down to the river and look back up at the site. What are we going to see from down below? Because there is an area down by the river that's a beautiful forested flat area that we want to have access to from this portion of the site. And we want to be able to access that lower area because it's a totally different experience. And when you're down there looking back to the house from down below, we want it to be inspiring. So those are some of the key things that we're looking at. We have to bring in geotechnical engineers to do our geotechnical report. And they're going to tell us, it could turn out that where we want to put the house is bad soil. And if it's bad, what I mean by bad soil, meaning it's not strong enough to support the weight, or there's some sort of hidden rock outcroppings below and it's going to make it impossible to build on, or some other issue that we don't know about. So they bring out drilling rigs and they drill holes down in here and they give us a very detailed, probably a 50-page report that we have to evaluate. And the last thing we discovered is 2 years ago, there was a brand new code that says that we can't even build this house right now anywhere remotely close to this location. It has to be way up here. My hand's going way off the side, 1,000 feet from the river. So this is a huge, huge limitation. It wouldn't be possible. This is basically a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rebuild a dramatic project that's going to take advantage of the river view, take advantage of the breezes, take advantage of the views from above as you arrive to the house, and really create a close relationship to the river this will never be able to be done in the future. So this is the very beginning exploratory process. In the next video, we'll talk about where this has grown from this stage.